Today, I would like to present my research entitled Determination of Total Flavonoid and Phenolic Contents of Ampelicisus tessiflora leaf extract using solvents of different varieties. Ampelicisus tessiflora, also known as Gagatan harimau, is a traditional medicinal plant that has potential pharmacological activities, particularly due to its phenolic and flavonoid compounds. However, previous studies mainly used a single solvent with limited compound profiling. Therefore, sequential extraction using solvents of different varieties was applied. This study aimed to determine phenolic content and total flavonoid content of Ampelicisus tessiflora leaf extracts and to compare the effectiveness of enhexan, ethyl acetate, and ethanol as extraction solvents. The leaves were extracted using sequential extraction with enhexan, followed by ethyl acetate and then ethanol. Phytochemical screening was conducted to identify major secondary metabolites. Total flavonoid content was determined using the aluminum chloride method and expressed as quercetin equivalents. Total phenolic content was analyzed using the Follin-Foucault method and expressed as all measurements were performed using UV visible spectral photometry. The results showed that solvent polarity significantly influenced extraction efficiency. Phytochemical staining confirmed that flavonoid and phenolic compounds were mainly present in ethyl acetate and ethanol extract, indicating that these compounds are predominantly in semi-polar. Based on results, the ethyl acetate extract show the highest total phenolic and flavonoid contents, followed by the ethanol extract, and while the enhexan extract show the lowest values. In conclusion, ethyl acetate as a semi-polar solvent was the most effective solvent for extracting phenolic and flavonoid compounds from Ampelicisus tessiflora leaves. These findings support the potential use of Gagatan harimau leaves as a promising natural source of bioactive compounds, particularly for early-stage natural product-based drug discovery. Thank you for your attention.
Halo Miss Iza.
Cek.
Yes. Yes, Miss.
Oke. Oke, Iza ya. Based on your result, which solvent produce the highest flavonoid and phenolic content, and what is the practical implication for your future solvent selection?
Ethyl acetate show the higher phenolic and flavonoid content because most phenolic and flavonoid compounds in Ampelicisus deciflora are semipolar in nature. Ethyl acetate is a semipolar solvent, so it has better affinity and selectivity for extracting these compounds compared to nonpolar hexane and more polar ethanol.
Okay, thank you. Back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Akidatul Izzah. Now we are thank you, Dr. Yanti. And now we are moving into our second presenter, still the online presenter, Jesselyn Helena Putri Lai from Universitas Sumatera Utara will be presenting her work entitled Analysis of the Effect of Solvent Polarity on the Phytochemical Profile and Antioxidant Capacity of Ampelocisius thyrciflora. Jesselyn, time is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present my research today. My name is Jesselyn Helena Putralase from the undergraduate program, Faculty of Pharmacy, Universitas Sumatera Utara. Today, I will present my research entitled Analysis of the Effect of Solvent Polarity on the Phytochemical Profile and Antioxidant Capacity of Ampelicisus thyrciflora bloom plant leaves using the PPH method. Today, oxidative stress has become a major global health concern. In our daily life, especially during the daytime, we are exposed to pollutions, UV radiations, and environmental toxins. These exposures increase free radical formations, which can lead to oxidative stress, chronic inflammations, and eventually degenerative disease. Because of this, antioxidants play a very important role in neutralizing free radicals. Natural antioxidants from plants are especially interesting because they are safer, more accessible, and rich in bioactive compounds such as flavonoid and phenolics. Ampelicisus thyrciflora is traditionally used as a herbal medicine. However, scientific data about its antioxidant potential, especially related to solvent polarity during extractions, is still limited. So, the main urgency of this research is to understand how solvent polarity affect antioxidant compound extractions, so we can determine the most effective solvent for obtaining bioactive compound. The study used an experimental laboratory design. Extraction was performed using the maceration method because it's simple, effective, and suitable for preserving heat-sensitive compound. Three solvents with different polarities were used on hexane, ethyl, and ethanol. Antioxidant activity was tested using the DPPH method, with quercetin used as standard comparison. Next. On this slide, you can see the result of macroscopic examinations, microscopic examinations, phytochemical screening, and extra characterizations. You can also see the detailed data and documentation in appendix sections. Overall, phytochemical screening shows several bioactive compounds, which support the antioxidant potential of this plant. Next. Now moving to the antioxidant activity result. Based on the PPH test, the ethyl acetate extract showed the strongest antioxidant activity among the extract with an IC50 value of 24.65 plus minus 0.01 micrograms per milliliter. Then this was followed by the ethanol extract with an IC50 value of 27.72 plus minus 0.02 micrograms per milliliter. Meanwhile, the Diaz and hexane extract show the weakest antioxidant activity with an IC50 value of 45.16 plus minus 0.07 micrograms per milliliter. And for the comparison, quercetin as the standard show very strong antioxidant activity with an IC50 value of 3.54 plus minus 0.03 micrograms per milliliter. This is research clearly show that solvent polarity effect, antioxidant exertion efficiency, semipolar, and polar solvents like ethyl acetate and ethanol are more effective in extracting antioxidant compound compared to non-polar solvent like N-hexane. So in conclusions, Amplicius triciflora leaves contain bioactive compound with antioxidant potential. Solvent polarity significantly influence phytochemical profile and antioxidant capacity. And ethyl acetate extract show the best antioxidant activity among the test extract. This research support the potential development of this plant as a natural antioxidant source. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. What a fruitful presentation. Now I would like to invite our reviewer, Dr. Yanti. Please give your comment or question.
Okay, thank you, Lala. Lala Foresta. How are you today?
Thank you, Miss. I'm so good today.
Nggak apa-apa. Okay, Jesslyn, from the result, your results show that average IC50 and hexane, ethyl acetate, and ethanol. Which one the best result from your?
Okay, thank you for the questions. So the best result is ethyl acetate. So that we know that the true many antioxidant compounds are polar. However, plant materials contain very complex mixtures and compound with different polarities. Using stepwise or different polarity solvent, it's important to separate compound based on polarity and to understand which fractions contributes most to antioxidant activity. If we only use like a highly polar solvent, or may extract unweighted compound or sugars, protein, and chlorophyll, which do not contribute to antioxidant activity and may reduce extract selectivity. So, likewise, to extraction help us to identify which polarity range contains the most active compound and improve extraction selectivity. And then for the result, and IC50 for the ethyl acetate, you can see from my presentation before, is 27.72 plus minus 0.02 micrograms per milliliter.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you, Jesselyn. Thank you, Dr. Yanti. And now moving on to the next presenter, still online presenter. Please welcome Rashid bin Rusdi from Universitas Sumatera Utara. He will be presenting his work entitled Computational Study of the Anti-Inflammatory Activity of Flavonoid Compound from Gagatan Harimau Leaves against TNF-alpha and COX-2.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good day everyone. My name is Rashid Rusdi, and today I will present my study entitled Computational Study of the Anti-Inflammatory Activity of Flavonoid Compounds from Gagatan Harimau Leaves against TNF-alpha and COX-2. Next slide. So inflammation is a normal protective response of the body. However, when inflammation becomes chronic, it can contribute to many serious diseases, including type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, cancer, and neurodegenerative disorders. Now, in particular, neuroinflammation plays a major role in neuronal damage through prolonged activation of inflammatory mediators such as tumor necrosis factor alpha or TNF-alpha and cyclooxygenase 2 or COX-2. These two proteins amplify inflammatory signaling and prostaglandin production, making them important therapeutic targets. Now, currently, steroidal and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs are widely used. However, their long-term use is associated with adverse effects, including gastrointestinal, renal, and cardiovascular complications. Therefore, there is a strong need to develop safer alternative anti-inflammatory agents, particularly from natural sources. Now, Ampelocetus tussiflora, locally known as Gagatan harimau, is a traditional medicinal plant that contains flavonoid compounds. However, the molecular interactions of these flavonoids with TNF-alpha and COX-2 have not been extensively studied. This provides a strong basis for an in silico investigation. Next slide. So in the study, 7 flavonoid compounds were identified from Ampelocetus tussiflora leaf extract using LC-HRMS analysis conducted by Institute Teknologi Bandung. Now the tools used Autodoc-Vina, a website, PAS Online, Protein Data Bank, AdMedLab, and Swiss Armor. Biological activity prediction was performed using PAS Online, while physical chemical properties and drug likeness were evaluated using Swiss Armor. Toxicity parameters were assessed using AdMedLab. For the molecular docking studies were conducted using Autodoc-Vina to evaluate the binding interactions between selected flavonoid and the inflammatory target proteins TNF-alpha and COX-2. Protein structures were obtained from Protein Data Bank, and the validation were performed using RMSD analysis and ROC curve analysis with DUT-A dataset. Next slide. So the past prediction results indicated that all identified flavonoid compounds showed probable anti-inflammatory activity. Most of the compounds fulfilled Lipinski's rule of 5, suggesting good drug likeness. Toxicity prediction showed that the flavonoids were classified with safe toxicity categories, indicating low toxicity risk. Molecular docking analysis demonstrated strong binding affinities of the flavonoid towards TNF-alpha and COX-2. For TNF-alpha, the key interactions were observed at the tyrosine 119 residue. Quercetin showed a binding affinity of negative 6.4 kilocalorie per mole, followed by myostatin and myostatin. For COX-2, the flavonoids interacted mainly with tyrosine 385 and VAL523, which are critical residues for COX-2 inhibition. Among the compounds, quercetin exhibited the strongest binding affinity with a value of negative 9.8 kilocalorie per mole, followed by camphorol and isohamnitin. Docker validation showed MSD values of 1.759 angstrom for TNF-alpha and 0.187 angstrom for COX-2, most of which are below 2 angstrom, indicating reliable docking accuracy. ROC curve analysis produced high IUC values of 0.959 for TNF-alpha and 0.98 for COX-2, demonstrating excellent predictive performance of the docking models. Next slide. So in conclusion, flavonoid compounds from Ampelopsis tertiflora leaves fulfill the biological activity, physicochemical, and toxicity requirements for potential anti-inflammatory agents based on computational analysis. Molecular docking demonstrated strong and stable interactions with key residues of TNF-alpha and COX-2, supported by reliable docking validations and high ROC accuracy. These findings suggest that flavonoids from Gagatan harimau have promising potential as plant-based anti-inflammatory candidates. However, further in vitro and in vivo studies are required to confirm their therapeutic efficacy. So that's all for me. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Rashid. Now we would like to invite our reviewer, Dr. Apotheker Triwijayanti, to give comment or question.
Thank you. Okay, the visual explanation is very good, and this is question for you based on the docking result. Yeah, which flavonoids show the strongest binding to the main inflammatory target?
Sorry. Okay. So for the strongest compound that show the strongest binding, so for TNF-alpha, the strongest compound is quercetin, which has interact with the key residue tyrosine 119 with an affinity of negative 6.4, while COX-2 is quercetin, which has interacted with tyrosine 385 and Val523 with an affinity of negative 9.8. So for docking, for autodock, the higher the binding affinity, which is the more negative the value, which means the higher the probability of interactions between the compounds and the target proteins.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rashid. Thank you, Dr. Yanti. And we will move to the next presenter, the last online presenter, Salsabila Yasmin Azahra from Universitas Sumatera Utara will be presenting her work entitled Network Pharmacology and Molecular Docking Analysis of Flavonoid from Gagatan harimau leaves as potential anti-inflammatory agents. Salsabila, time is yours.
Good afternoon, respected reviewers and fellow researchers. My name is Salsabila Azahra from the Faculty of Pharmacy, University of Sumatera Utara, Indonesia. Today, I am pleased to present our study entitled Pharmacology and Molecular Docking Analysis of Flavonoids from Gagatan harimau leaves as potential anti-inflammatory agents. Next slide. Inflammation is a crucial biological response for host events. However, persistent or chronic inflammation contributes to the development of numerous diseases, including cardiovascular disorders, cancer, and autoimmune disease. Although conventional anti-inflammatory drugs are widely used, long-term administration is often associated with adverse effects, emphasizing the need for safer therapeutic alternatives. Ampelopsis tertiflora, traditionally used in herbal medicine, contains various flavonoid compounds with reported pharmacological potential, yet their molecular anti-inflammatory mechanism remain insufficiently explored. Therefore, this study aimed to elucidate the anti-inflammatory mechanism of flavonoids from Ampelopsis tertiflora using an integrated pharmacology and molecular docking approach. The study employed an integrated in silico methodology. Bioactive flavonoids were identified and subject to target prediction using several databases, protein-protein interaction using
string database and compound protein interaction using this database, and GOKGG enrichment analysis using Shinigo database. Based on network topology parameters, interleukin-6 and toll-like receptor 4 were identified as key inflammatory targets and further evaluated through molecular docking, including ligand and receptor preparation, docking validation using RMSE and binding affinity analysis. I will now present the key findings obtained from the network pharmacology analysis. The previous slide, please. The PPI network consisted of 484 nodes and 2,213 edges, indicating a highly interconnected inflammatory network. CPI analysis demonstrated that quercetin exhibited the strongest interaction with inflammatory targets, especially interleukin-6 with interaction score of 0.951. Topological analysis revealed tumor necrosis factor and interleukin-6 as the most central protein, suggesting their pivotal regulatory role in inflammation. GONK-GG enrichment analysis showed a significant involvement in major inflammatory pathways, including tumor necrosis factor, nuclear factor kappa beta, toll-like receptor, interleukin-17, MAPK, and jammer kinase start signaling pathways, supporting the multi-target nature of the flavonoids. To validate this network-based findings at the molecular level, docking studies were subsequently performed. Docking protocol validation demonstrated excellent reliability with RMSE values of 0.20 Armstrong for interleukin-6 and 0.86 Armstrong for toll-like receptor 4. Both fell below the accepted threshold. Docking results revealed that quercetin showed the highest binding affinity toward interleukin-6, while quercetin exhibited the most favorable interaction with toll-like receptor 4. These flavonoids interacted with key amino acid residues involved in inflammatory activation, suggesting their potential to inhibit interleukin-6 and toll-like receptor 4 mediating signaling pathways. In addition to docking validation, receiver operating characteristic analysis was performed to evaluate the performance of docking-based virtual screening. The ROC AUC values obtained were 0.915 for interleukin-6 and 0.946 for toll-like receptor 4, indicating excellent discriminatory ability of the docking model in distinguished active compounds from decoys. This result further confirmed the robustness and reliability of the molecular docking approach used in the study. By integrating network pharmacology, molecular docking, and validation, this study demonstrates that components from ample-specific flora exert multi-target anti-inflammatory effects, primarily through modulation of interleukin-6 and toll-like receptor 4 signaling pathways. In conclusion, flavonoids derived from ampelo-associative flora exhibit promising anti-inflammatory potential through coordinated regulation of key inflammatory targets and pathways. This finding provides a strong theoretical and molecular basis for further in vitro and in vivo investigations. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Next, we would like to invite our reviewer to give comments or question.
Thank you. Okay, the component target relation will really explain, yeah. Okay, the question based on your finding, which components stand out the most promising anti-inflammatory candidate to the IL-6 and TLR4 modulation?
Thank you for the question. For interleukin-6, quercetin shows the strongest binding affinity, while for toll-like receptor 4, miracetin showing the strongest binding affinity. But the most significant result of our study is the identification of quercetin compound as the key bioactive compound, along with toll-like receptor 4 and interleukin-6. Quercetin shows like the main regulatory compound that can be used for inhibit target inflammation.
Okay, that's your final answer?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yanti. Thank you, Salsabila. Okay, next move to the offline session. We will start from Cornelis Samea Putih from Universitas 17 Agustus 1945. that will present socio-demographic factors and adherence to benzathine penicillin injection. Cornelis, the floor is yours. Thank you. Your English is actually good. It is clear enough. Thank you. Um, we would like to invite our reviewer to give comment or maybe question.
Okay, good afternoon, Cornelis. I think your English pronunciation was clear and easy to understand, yeah. So, okay, the question based on your result, which socio-demographic factor most frequently appears as determinant of adherence? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rianti. Thank you, Cornelis. You may be seated. And then we will continue to the next presenter, Dian Nurmansyah from Borneo Lestari University. And he will present about his work entitled From Drug of Choice to Public Health Tool, a narrative review of ivermectin for strongly loidiasis control. Time is yours.
with 26.1 prevalence of strongyloidiasis. Strongyloidiasis is caused by Strongyloides stercoralis, which is soil-transmitted amines, or in Indonesia we call it cakingan. Yeah, so it's underreported and underdiagnosed, but behind that, it's very dangerous disease due to its hyperinfection, especially for those who have immunosuppressive condition. The second one is Indonesia have a program called POPM, or Mass Drug Administration. But in Indonesia, we only use albendazole as a drug of choice. Several papers say that albendazole has bad efficacy against SS or strongyloides, and some of the papers say that ivermectin is the best choice of drug for SS because it has cure rate more than 90%. So that's the main problem of this narrative review. So the combination between underreported and underdiagnosis, and also lack of use ivermectin in Indonesia, because Indonesia doesn't use it as a drug of choice for SS or cakingan. So this research aim is to evaluate the evidence of ivermectin's efficacy. The second one is to identify what is the implementation barriers for ivermectin to be used in Indonesia. And the last aim is to we try to formulate the recommendation about the government about the using of ivermectin for SS medication. This is our findings. Based on the paper we have reviewed, we could introducing ivermectin for strongyloides
Yes.
is the best choice drug with the cure rate from 94 to 98.8% efficacy. So what is the implementation? What is the implementation barriers that we could implement in Indonesia? First is the policy. Yeah, we don't use ivermectin. We use albendazole. Second one is diagnostic. The lack of diagnostic because the sensitivity or specificity to detect the enterocolitis is very bad. And also the operational, which is change and supply in the field. It's hard to deliver the drug and to the right person or community. And also socio-cultural. As we know, ivermectin was used when we had COVID-19 pandemic. And physicians say that diabetes is one of the social factors. So what can we suggest when we educate the government about the recommendation? First, we need to conduct several sentinel surveillance to make sure that we have baseline data. How many prevalence of strongyloidiasis in Indonesia, especially in South Kalimantan, because that's the most province that we have the pollution. The second one is to check our laboratory capacity, as was informed earlier, because we don't know who will receive the ivermectin. We don't know if they are infected or not.
Gajah Mada University. My bad. Okay, next, we would like to invite our reviewer to give comment or question.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Dian. Nice presentation. Based on your finding, which result most clearly indicate that current use of ivermectin is still not optimal in reducing strongyloidiasis, transmission at the population level. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yanti, and thank you, Dian. You may be seated. And we are moving to the next presenter, Indah Raudatul Jannah from Universitas 17 Agustus 1945. She will present her work entitled Patient Adherence to Oral Anti-Diabetic Drugs in Asia, a review. Time is yours.
Second is family and social support. So the third is cause and accessibility. The last is culture, beliefs, and behavior. The healthy literacy and education consistent like to better adherence, structure, counseling, and follow-up improve outcomes. And the second, family and social support, collective visit, culture show higher adherence when family assist with a reminder and emotional support. So the cause and accessibility, affordability, and inconsistent drug availability reduce adherence, especially in low resource setting. So the last is culture beliefs and behavior, reliance on herbal remedies, fear of side effect, forgetfulness, and treatment fatigue drive non-adherence. So we have finding. In the finding is level, trend, and evidence. Adherence rates report across student range from 14 until 17%, when with an overall assessment average near 15 until 16%. And lower adherence cluster in LMEC setting where cost and access are limiting factor. Education-based and multifactorial intervention show the most consistent adherence improvement. For the most study is cross-sectional, sample size very widely, and the geography is Indonesia, there is Malaysia, there is Iran, Nepal, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, India, Bangladesh, Taiwan, and others. And I have policy example in Taiwan. The policy example, medication subsidies or policy in Taiwan improve adherence. Next. In plus them, I have 4 key determinants and barriers, and I have 4 conclusion and recommendation. The first is education and counseling. And the second is family and community. The third is healthcare communication. And the last is police and access. Let's we see one first. The first is education and counseling. The education and counseling continue cultural sensitive diabetes education and structure follow-up are essential. So the second is family and community. Leverage family adjustment and community intervention to sustain routine and support. So there is healthy care communication. Improve provider-patient communication, increase increase consultation time and trust building. And the last is policy and access. There is expense subsidies, insurance coverage, and consistent drug supply to direct cost barriers. So, integrate multidimensional strategy combining education, social support, provider adjustment, and policy action are required to improve long-term glycemic control across ASEAN healthy care system. Thank you very much for attention. Maybe now hear my presentation. Finally, I would like to apologize if my English is not very fluent and if there are any parts that are difficult to understand. I'm so sorry because I know still learning too in English language. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Patient adherence is kepatuhan pasien in bahasa Indonesia, right? Okay, we would like to invite the reviewer to give comments or question.
Okay, thank you, Miss Indah. Yes, your English good. The question, yeah, from the key of finding the studies you synthesized before, yeah. Which factor most consistently emerges the main determinant of adherence to oral antidiabetic drugs in Asia?
Okay, thank you for the question, doctor. Maybe I can answer which one. I think in determinant case is healthy literacy and education and family social support. Because why? Because health literacy and education is healthy literacy was consistent associated with better medication adherence, structure education, counseling, and regular follow-up significant improve adherence outcome among patients. And the second, there is family and social support. Because why? Because in complete deficit ASEAN culture, family involvement play on important role. And like support from family that can remainder and emotional encouragement was like to hear adherence. Maybe like that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yanti. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before that, I have one remote. Nelson Mandela said, education is the powerful weapon which you can to use to change the world. Thank you very much. In the last I say, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Indah Raudatul Jannah. Now we will move to the next presenter, Lala Foresta Valentin Gunasari from Gadjah Mada University will be presenting her work entitled Re-Evaluating Albendazole-Based Preventive Chemotherapy for Soil-Transmitted Helminths in Indonesia, a narrative review on efficacy, challenges, and future strategies. Time is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Lala. I am a student from Gadjah Mada University. Today I will present our narrative review titled Re-Evaluating Albendazole-Based Preventive Chemotherapy for Soil-Transmitted Helminths in Indonesia. Soil-transmitted helminthiasis remain a significant public health burden in Indonesia, especially among children. For over a decade, national control strategy has centered mass drug administration, or we can say MDA, with albendazole is the drug of choice. However, despite long-term effort, the high infection rates persist in many regions. So it raises critical questions. Is our national continued reliance of single dose of albendazole still the best strategy? And our review aims to examine the efficacy of albendazole, identify the key factors, and propose the path forwards. Next slide, please. To address this, we conducted a narrative review. We systematically searched two major databases, ScienceDirect and Google Scholar, to find the relevant literature published between 2020 and 2025. The keywords that we use are albendazole, efficacy, soil-transmitted helminths, mass drug administration, and Indonesia. The objective was to aim synthesize evidence on the efficacy of albendazole and identify barriers to STH control. Identified literature was screened and synthesized thematically. Our analysis revealed several critical findings. Next slide, please. First and most important, the efficacy of albendazole is highly variable and depends on the parasite species. While it remains highly active against Ascaris lumbricoides with cure rates above 90%, it remains its performance against Rehura is suboptimal, with the cure rates often below 50%. And the efficacy of albendazole against hookworms is moderate but is inconsistent. And then we also found several challenges in MDA implementation in Indonesia. That was inconsistent program delivery and inadequate coverage of MDA, and that was limitation of diagnosis of STH infection, and then lack of national surveillance of the data for drug efficacy and resistance of drug. And then from the community, we also found that there was low adherence and misconceptions about deworming. And furthermore, drug treatment alone is insufficient. So the poor sanitation, poverty, and lack of clean water can make a rapid reinfection and sustaining transmission cycle. Finally, the widespread and prolonged use of albendazole can lead to can increase the risk of drug resistance. Next slide. Given this finding, we propose 5 key recommendations. One, we must urgently conduct national efficacy studies using sensitive diagnostic to assess the current efficacy of albendazole against all STH species. Number 2, we need to strengthen program implementation to ensure the Number 2, we should pilot and evaluate the alternative drug strategies such as albendazole ivermectin combination therapy and multi-day albendazole regimens. 3, we need to strengthen program implementation to ensure consistent and high coverage of MDA. Number 4, we should consider to expanding treatment coverage from school-based to community-wide MDA, and so that we can treat all of the age groups to break the transmission. And the last, sustainable success is impossible without genuine integration with water, sanitation, and hygiene to prevent the reinfection. And for the last, let me ask you a question. If one method has been proven to be no longer effective, wouldn't we want to try another method? That's all from me. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you. What a fruitful presentation. Okay, next we would like to invite Dr. Yanti to give comments or questions.
Okay, Miss Lala from UGM. Considering the cure rates of albendazole can reach up 93%, but its performance remain inconsistent, with the key finding best explain the main cause of this inconsistency in Indonesian MDA program.
Pardon me, can you repeat once again, Miss? I can get it.
Okay, considering the cure rates of albendazole can reach up to 93%, but its performance remain inconsistent, which key finding best explain the main cause of this inconsistency in Indonesia MDA program.
Okay, first, we don't even have the data yet from Indonesia. I have data, I get the data from the Malaysia for the efficacy of albendazole. But from the literature that I have been read, the the factor that can affect the efficacy of albendazole maybe from the nutrition status of the patient, and then genetic, and then poverty status, economic, socioeconomic status, and maybe the wash status from the patient.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Yanti. Thank you, Miss Lala. Oh, give applause to Miss Lala for a very clear English and a very complete presentation and data. Okay. Next, we will move to the next presenter, Muhammad Aji Santoso. He will be presenting his work entitled Molecular Docking, Pharmacokinetic and Toxicity Study of Cucurbita moschata as a Candidate for Alzheimer's Disease Treatment. Muhammad Aji Santoso, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, review and participant. My name is Aji Santoso from Universitas Machung Malang. I will present the title slide. Okay, title Molecular Docking, Pharmacokinetic and Toxicity Study of Cucurbita moschata as Candidate for Alzheimer Disease Treatment. Next. Okay, Alzheimer disease is characterized by beta amyloid accumulation and cholinergic dysfunction. BHC1 and HI are key therapeutic target. Next. Cucurbita moschata has a high antioxidant with a IC50 value 30.75 and therapeutic effect. This study to evaluate the potency
Recording in
in
progress.
2-para-hydroxy alcohol and trigonolane. And control compound donepezol memantine rivastin and target protein BH1 and ACHA. This step on method, 1 analysis of pharmacokinetic, 2 analysis of toxicity active compound, 3 rodocking of the native ligand, the protein, and molecular docking. Next. Okay. Based on data by pharmacokinetic, 3 active compound exceed high gastrointestinal absorption, exceed membrane permeability and bioavailability. And based on toxicity data, all active compound cucurbita mocasta is classified and fairly toxic. Next. Next. Okay. Next. Okay. It is a result by molecular docking. Protein BH1 and protein ACHA. In this compare 3 compound by cucurbita and control positive and ligand native. This conclude trigonolane is compound exhibiting lower binding than the reference inhibitor. It is more negative binding affinity, indicates strong ligand receptor interaction and greeting complex stability. Next. Next. Okay. It is a conclusion. Trigonolane and active compound from cucurbita mocasta demonstrate promising binding affinity and low toxicity, and Alzheimer drug candidate stroke improvement in blood-brain barrier penetration and efficacy and are needed. Recommendation: future development may focus on structural modification of the compound on enhanced binding affinity, the use of drug delivery system to improve blood-brain barrier penetration, as well in vivo studies to validate its safety and efficacy.
Time
Thank you.
is up. Thank you. 3 minutes sharp. Okay. We would like to invite our reviewer to give comment or question.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Mr. Aji from Machung University.
Yes.
I have 5 questions. Oh no, only 1.
Okay.
From the pharmacokinetic and toxicity result, what is the most prominent advantage of trigonelline compared with the other compound?
3 compound. 3 compound cucurbitine, para-hydroxylbenzene, and trigonolane. In this, the best the best active compound is trigonolane. It is binding line-nya lower and interaction as receptornya it's strong. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will move on the next presenter, Muhammad Rizaldi from Universitas 17 Agustus 1945 Jakarta. I'm sorry for not reading your title because we don't have the information, so you can please
Okay.
start your presentation.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here today. I want to say thank you for the opportunity. My name is Muhammad Rizaldi. I'm from Universitas 17 Agustus 1945 Jakarta. Today, I would like to present my review about systematic review antibiotic use studies and strategies to improve public knowledge in developing countries. Please, next slide. Okay, this is the abstract. Antimicrobial resistance has been recognized as a global health threat intensified by irrational antibiotic use in developing countries, with prescription rates reaching 70.7%, despite bacterial infection prevalence of only 17.3 until 24.9%. This study aimed to systematically synthesize recent scientific evidence on antibiotic use patterns and public knowledge improvement strategies in developing countries during 2021 until 2026. Okay, the finding indicated high prevalence of non-prescription self-medication in Vietnam, 55.2%, Bangladesh 45.7%, and Indonesia 40%, along with fundamental misconception as 73% of the population believe antibiotics were effective for viral infection. Socio-demographic factors significantly influence knowledge and practices. Intervention strategies show particular effectiveness and a holistic approach involving regulatory strengthening, representative surveillance system, targeted education, and multi-sectoral collaboration was deemed necessary. Please, next. Okay, this is method. This study employed a systematic literature review following the PRISMA 2021 guidelines to synthesize evidence and antibiotic use and knowledge enhancement strategies in developing countries during 2021 until 2026 period. A comprehensive literature search was conducted across major database, PubMed, Scopus, Web of Science, and Science Direct, using relevant keywords. Complement by a manual search of reference list. The selection process involved title and abstract screening, followed by full text eligibility assessment performed independently by 2 reviewers. Inclusion criteria encompass studies conducted in developing countries, educational intervention related to antibiotic use, and publication in the English language. Please, next.
Your time is up.
Okay. Okay, the 4 point, antibiotic use pattern in developing countries, factor influencing public knowledge and awareness, implementation strategies for increasing public knowledge, effectiveness of educational and personal strategies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We would like to ask the reviewer to give maybe comment or question. Dr. Yanti, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, from your finding, what is the most prominent risk pattern of antibiotic use in developing countries?
Non-prescription pattern of antibiotic use and public knowledge. Non-prescription antibiotic use and self-medication remain highly prevalent, particularly in Asian setting. Amoxicillin was identified as the most frequently used antibiotic. Overall, this is amoxicillin, ampicillin, cefadroxil is the 3 of the most antibiotic used in Asian.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We will move to the next presenter, Najwa Fida Zafira from Universitas Islam Indonesia, that will present her work entitled Thrombolysis Rate in Ischemic Stroke Patients. Time is yours.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for opportunity to present my research today. So my name is Najwa Fida Zafira, and I'm from Islamic University of Indonesia. So today, I would like to present my research. Is it thrombolysis rate in ischemic stroke patient, a single center study at Secondary Public Hospital in Yogyakarta. So, next. Stroke is the one leading cause of death and disability worldwide. Ischemic stroke accounts for the majority of stroke case. And intravenous thrombolysis is effective treatment for acute stroke. However, its use in Indonesia is still limited, especially in secondary hospital. So, therefore, this study aims to describe thrombolysis rate, identify the factor associated with thrombolysis in ischemic stroke patient at secondary public. For the method, a cross-sectional study using retrospective medical record data for 458 ischemic patients hospitalized in 2024. Variable include demographic, clinic characteristic, arrival time, and medication use. And the statistical analysis employ descriptive method and the logistic regression. Next. So for the result, study population and baseline characteristic, there were 600 patients admitted to the hospital ischemic stroke during 2024, following the selection process based on inclusion and exclusion criteria, which is 458 subject qualified for further analysis. And the patient characteristic, the study population was mostly older adults and with slightly more males and predominantly moderate and low education. Nearly all were covered by BPJS insurance. For the clinical characteristic, most had a first ever stroke with hypertension as the main comorbidity. Symptoms often begin in the morning and almost all arrived by private transportation, with 91% beyond of the 4.5-hour window, limiting thrombolysis. For the subchronical infarction were common, and stroke were mostly mild, and hospital stay short is the 1 until 5 days, and 93% is discharged in the good condition. For the thrombolysis rate, only 6.55% received the intravenous thrombolysis with the 4.5-hour window, consistent with Indonesia guideline and evidence support alteplase or RTPA for better outcome. Most instead received clopidogrel as a monotherapy, while supportive care with statin, beta blocker, ACE inhibitor, and ARB was provided to manage risk and prevent recurrence.
Thank you. Your time is up. Okay. The reviewer.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Najwa. Can you explain which results most strongly demonstrated that delay patient arrival is the main barrier to thrombolysis administration?
Okay, hospital time. Hospital arrival time was the most influent factor because it determines eligibility for IVT thrombolysis within the 4.5-hour treatment window. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Give a warm applause for the presenter. Tadi kelewat ya, nggak applause ya. I'm so sorry. Karena waktunya sudah sore. Okay, next move to the next presenter. Please welcome Nastiti Putri Nariswari from Universitas Islam Indonesia. Will be presenting her work entitled Validation of a Multiplex Method for the Identification of Chicken, Cow, and Pig Genes using polymerase chain reaction. Time is yours.
Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nastiti Putri Nariswari. I'm from Islamic University of Indonesia. Today, I would like to present my research. The title is Validation of a Multiplex Method for the Identification of Chicken, Cow, and Pig Genes using polymerase chain reaction. Okay, the determination of authenticity and halal status of meat-based food product is a crucial aspect of the food industry, particularly in countries with a mostly Muslim population. In Indonesia, this concern is strongly related to Law Number 33 of 2014 about halal authentication in consumer product is essential for public assurance, as product halalness may be compromised by adulteration with prohibited meat such as pork. Therefore, accurate, sensitive, and reliable analytical methods are required to detect the presence of non-halal ingredient in food products. The detection of meat adulteration can be carried out using DNA-based molecular technique, one of which is multiplex PCR. targeted for analysis mitochondria DNA specific 12 sRNA gene. The advantage is mitochondrial DNA, circular and more stable against heat and other degradation factor. And then the 12 sRNA gene has low variety in genetics. And then the parameter in method validation are specificity and sensitivity. Okay, next. Okay, this is the method. First of all, DNA isolation from sample preparation, lysis, DNA binding, was buffer, and then DNA elution. After that, we can amplification of chicken, cow, and pig DNA by PCR, and then agar scale electrophoresis visualization, and then the result. The important things of multiplex PCR is the PCR formula, especially in the master mix, contains the NTP, and then tech polymerase buffer, and magnesium chloride. And then the third things is PCR cycling condition. There are steps for PCR, denaturation, annealing, extension, post-extension, and hold. There are temperature and time. Okay, next. This is the result. We can know that the DNA isolation is adequate and purity, and then we use the PCR amplification. Chicken, cow, and pig DNA bands are formed in one column with each base pair. The cow is 1376 base pair, and then the pig 2086 base pair, and then the chicken 184 base pair. And then the sensitivity specificity test. The result of specificity test show that each band form correspondent to its DNA. And then this is the sensitivity test. Sensitivity test show that each primer could work optimally when only one DNA template was tested with quite high sensitivity. And then the conclusion based on the result of validation study of the DNA identification method using the mitochondrial 12 sRNA gene using multiplex PCR, it can be concluded that the developed method has met the main validation parameters, namely specificity and sensitivity. The primer use were proven to be able to specifically amplify the DNA of the target species without showing cross-reactivity with DNA from other species or negative controls.
Thank
And
you.
then
Your time is up. The reviewer, please, for comment or question.
Okay, thank you. Okay, from your results, which most clearly show that this method is reliable for detecting very small amount of non-halal meat contamination.
yes, it can be identification for pig gene. It's used for food product. Yeah, for identification food product.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yanti. Thank you, Nastisi. Give applause to the presenter. Okay, we will next move to Onesis Novita Dewi from Universitas 17 Agustus 1945. She will be presenting her work entitled Community-Based Intervention in Hypertension Management. Time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It is an honor to be here today. My name is Onesis Novita Dewi, and today I will be discussing community-based intervention in hypertension management. Focus of the review is to provide you with insight into how this is topic impact our fight. Next. Hypertension is a global public health problem that contributes significant to cardiovascular morbidity and mortality. Community-based interventions have been identified as a potential approach to improving blood pressure control through community improvement and the improvement of community health workers. this scoping review and to map various form of community-based interventions that have been implemented in hypertension control and assess their effective key component and contributing factor to their success. Next, method. The research method used a scoping review approach. Literature search was conducted in PubMed, Scopus, and Google Scholar using the keyword community-based intervention, hypertension control, and blood pressure management. Inclusion criteria included article in English or Indonesian published between 2023 and 2025 and involving community level intervention. Next, result. Points indicate the community-based interventions include health education, home visit by community health worker, training of health work through the echo model, digital blood pressure monitoring, and support from families and LD group, home-based and telehealth approach consistently reduce systolic blood pressure by 520 mmHg and increase the proportion of patients with controlled blood pressure by 60–80% for furthermore, interventions involving health extension workers and community health workers also encourage patient connection to clinical service from 12% to over 60%.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Dr. Yanti, maybe want to give
Okay, thank
comment
you.
or question?
Miss Onesis.
Yeah.
Miss
Yes.
Onesis. Okay, Miss Onesis, I have one question for you. Which result most strongly demonstrated that home-based and telehealth approach produce the greatest impact on blood pressure control?
I think the form of intervention is home visit by public health worker.
Okay, thank you.
Makasih.
Thank you,
Assalamualaikum
Dr.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Give applause to Onesis for her presentation. Yeah. Next, we will move to the next presenter, Raka Indrasta Firjatullah from Islamic University of Indonesia with his work entitled Effectiveness of Gold Nanoparticles as an Amoxicillin Nanocarrier in Overcoming Methicillin-Resistant Staphylococcus aureus Infection. Time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, distinguished reviewer and fellow researcher. I am Raka Indrasta Firjatullah from Department of Pharmacy, Islamic University of Indonesia. So today I feel so honored to present our research title, Effectiveness of Gold Nanoparticle as an Amoxicillin Nanocarriers in Overcoming Methicillin-Resistant Staphylococcus aureus Infection. Next. The background of our research, right now, the world is facing the critical challenge in the form of antimicrobial resistance. Among the most formidable pathogen is methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. The emergence of methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus as a pathogen that is difficult to treat using antibiotic conventional. Methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus are not only difficult to manage with antibiotic conventional, but also contribute to increase morbidity and mortality rates across the various healthcare facilities among the world. Proven by the data presented by Limato et al. In 2022, the death because of antimicrobial resistance account for 20.4%, total global mortality. To address this, we explore the potential of gold nanoparticle as an efficient nanocarrier, and the combination of gold nanoparticle with amoxicillin can enhance the antibacterial effectiveness against resistant bacteria, including MRSA. Next. Moving to the method, we synthesize the gold nanoparticle using the Turkefic method, followed by the conjugation with the amoxicillin. And then the sample of gold nanoparticle and then the conjugate with the amoxicillin was determined comprehensive characterization such as maximum wavelength using multimode reader, and then functional group using Fourier transform infrared, and then particle size and zeta potential using particle size analyzers. And then the antibacterial effectivity was evaluated using microdeletion method. And then next for the result, the result of gold nanoparticle synthesis and was shown on the Erlenmeyer flash, and then the conjugate sample was shown on the microtubes. And then for the characterization result, like maximum wavelength, the result is for the gold nanoparticles 528 nanometer, and then move after conjugate with the amoxicillin to 530 nanometer. And then for the particle size of gold nanoparticle sample is 60.53 nanometer. And then after conjugate, 67.93 nanometer. And then the zeta potential for the gold nanoparticles sample is minus 31.07 millivolt. And then after conjugate with the amoxicillin, the zeta potential is minus 26.70 millivolt. And then for the Fourier transform infrared analysis was confirmed by the presence of specific characteristic amoxicillin functional group on the conjugate sample. And then for the microdeletion result, the result of the parity test showed the highest and the lowest concentration, indicated significant differences between the two treatments. So we can conclude that Turkefic method was statistically significant with the outcome. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you. We would like to invite Dr. Yanti to provide comment or question.
Thank you. Nice presentation, Mr. Raka. You're so powerful.
Thank you, Miss.
Okay, the question: what's the key finding most strongly support AUNP?
Yes.
Amoxicillin as a potential alternative strategy to overcome MRSA.
So the gold nanoparticles conjugate with amoxicillin is more effective than the amoxicillin and bare amoxicillin and the bare gold nanoparticle shown on the microdeletion from the highest until the lowest concentration. Any confirmation? Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Yanti. Thank you, Raka. Give applause to our presenter. And finally, we reach our last presenter today. Please welcome Samra Kausar from Universitas 11 Maret with his work entitled Antimicrobial Potential of Finger Root Ethyl Acetate Extract.
Assalamualaikum everyone. My name is Samra Kausar and I am an international student from Universitas 11 Maret ONS Surakarta, Indonesia. Today I am going to present about my research which is entitled as Antimicrobial Potential of Finger Root Ethyl Acetate Extract. Next please. The aim of my study is to explore and investigate about the finger root. Finger root is a medicinal plant, also a herbal plant, and also used as spice in all around Southeast Asia and also in China. It is also known as tamu kunci in Indonesia, and its common name is finger root, as well as Chinese key. And in my research, I have find out phenolic content and total flavonoid content and the antimicrobial activity of the finger root ethyl acetate extract. Next, please. As far as my methodology is concerned, I used ethyl acetate for the maceration of the finger root powder. Then for the concentration, I used rotary evaporator, and then phytochemical analysis for the total flavonoid and total phenolic content. I used spectrophotic methods, and for the antimicrobial testing, I used disk diffusion method. Next slide, please. I find out that total flavonoid content in the finger root ethyl acetate extract was almost 36, both against the phenol and also against the gallic acid, while the flavonoid content is only 6.4 against the quercetin standard, and it is also dose dependent about the antimicrobial activity. While I increase the concentration, the antimicrobial activity also increase, and all of the organism has different effect against the um, um, uh, um, uh, I find out that Pseudomonas aeruginosa has the highest zone of inhibition, while the Escherichia coli has the least, while the fungus Candida albicans has almost 12.8. As far as I conclude my research, I can say that ethyl acetate has measurable amount of both phenol and the flavonoid content, and it has shown significant antimicrobial and antibacterial and antifungal activity against the selected organism, and it is also dependent on the concentration. The zone of inhibition is large against the large concentration, and it is selective because all of the organism has shown different activity. This is all about my presentation today. Thank you everyone for your patience and your attention. Thank you once again.
Thank you. What a very clear presentation. Dr. Yanti, can you please give comment or question?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Samra. The question, according to your antimicrobial activity data, which microorganisms show the highest sensitivity to the finger root ethyl acetate extract?
Pseudomonas aeruginosa has shown the highest antimicrobial zone, while the Escherichia coli was more resistant.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Yanti. Give applause to
Thank you
Samra
once
Kausar.
again everyone for your attention.
Okay, you may be seated. Dr. Yanti, maybe you want to give more messages? Oh, it's enough. So, the last presenter bring us to the end of our presentation today. I would like to thank our reviewer for the time, Dr. Apotheker Triwijayanti MBH, and also I would like to thank our speakers here, all of the speakers, for the insightful session, and of course all the participants for your active participants. Thank you and have a good day. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Karena sudah selesai, ada pengumuman tambahan mungkin dari komite, Bu Ismi? Ada tambahan acara? Oh ya. Jangan meninggalkan ruangan dulu. Oh ya. Please stay at the room. Jangan pulang dulu ya. Nanti ada pemilihan best presenter. Siapa tahu dapat hadiahnya. So be patient. Ya, tunggu sebentar. Thank you. Oh, for the general participant atau peserta umum boleh pulang dulu, tapi untuk presenter bisa menunggu untuk pengumuman best presenter. Thank you.